Hello.
Good morning, Julia.
Good
Morning.
morning.
All right. Well, let me see. One, two, three, four, five. Oh, we got a lot. Okay, great. Just had to toggle my screen. I think we are ready to go. So Daniel, you can begin the public meeting. Also, I don't actually know how to promote participants to panelists, so that's going to be really awkward, but I'm just letting you know in advance. So if anyone has hot tips.
I think Daniel's gone. He said, FY, the webinar has started and the audience can see or hear us. We are live and good to go in the chat.
Okay, great. Well, I'm letting attendees know I'm not quite sure about functionality also. Best. Oh, I see it. Okay, great. Figured it out. All right. Well, welcome all to the December 12th meeting of the Citizen Oversight Board. Happy holidays to all, and I hope everyone's enjoying this really nice weather for December. We have got a very full agenda today, so let's dive right into it. Just kind of a quick overview of what we're hoping to achieve today. Um, we've got the chief on. Chief, welcome. We'll have a conversation with you. The monitor's office also produced their semi-annual report between our last meeting and this meeting. And so Monitor Castle will provide a brief overview of what that report contains, and then a few other items. Let's get to board business and let's see, what else can we say? This is going to be the last meeting of the year, and our next board meeting is scheduled to be, I think we have it in person on January 9th, but do let us know if that date is a date you are not available in person. We'll add a link. And then we will also be hosting our board elections on that date. So folks who hope to serve in an office, please let me know or let the group know that you hope to do that. And we'll have our elections at that time. Just to remind folks, we delayed our elections because there were sort of too many things happening over the summer when we typically have our elections. And so here we are half a year later, we need to have a new round of elections. So folks, let's start having the conversations there and we'll figure out what is next. But I'm sort of serving in an unelected role at the current moment. Next, I want to highlight that this is Karen Collier's last meeting as a member of the Citizen Oversight Board, unless you changed your mind between when I texted you on Tuesday and now,
I
which I'm
have
hoping.
not.
Okay, darn. So, too bad. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your service to the Denver community, for your quick wit, and I truly enjoy the pleasure of your friendship and collegiality. We always say that you're the one who brings the zinger to the meeting, and so I think we're going to miss that greatly. I realize too, in the time that I've known you, I've produced two children and lost a very important person in my life. So I've met one since I've known you, but we've gone through pandemic, George Floyd, EBD, you name it. We've sort of been through a lot of things. And, the challenge of oversight is that there are not a lot of wins, but we have made great progress in your time on the board. And I attribute a lot of that to your contributions. So thank you very much for serving. We did get you a memento. I'm not sure if that's arrived yet to you, but I will hand that to you on the Zoom call.
Beautiful. I should have brought it up. I have it in my trophy case already.
Nice. That's great. Next to all the tennis and golf trophies, no doubt. So I don't know if other board members have any words of thanks or gratitude to Karen or the monitor or Chief Thomas, but I'll just open it up here.
I'd
I'll
like to
jump
say that
in. Oops. No, go ahead, Karen.
Go ahead,
I just
Karen.
want to sit on this board, and it's close to my heart, and I will continue to participate as a citizen from now on. So I'm not going to disappear, but I encourage everyone else to be as active as I have been because it's very necessary at this point.
I just wanted to say thank you, Karen. Thank you for your guidance and your friendship. We've known each other a really long time as we worked together many, many years ago. And I know that it's not just been the board, you have been an active member in the community for many, many years. And your leadership is invaluable and you will be sorely missed. And I don't care where you go, I may still be calling you for coffee and a quick complaint session. So I'll try not to bug you too much.
Not a problem. I'll be available.
Anybody else?
I just want to echo all of that, Karen. In the last 2 years, you have been both um, the edge and the light for the board. So I am sorry to see you go. Thank you for everything that you have done for public service prior even to joining the board and all of your leadership here. And I'll also be one of those people that call you to check in and continue to benefit from your expertise and your experiences in public safety. Uh, I hope you have a great time out there on the course. Um,
Yes, I will. Absolutely.
I too just want to echo everybody. Karen, thank you so much for all your dedication. Um, as long as I've been on the board, you've always been there and appreciated all of the outreach when we would go out, in the community and stuff. You were always there. You have been a clutch player for sure. So thank you for all your contributions. And as Alfredo saying, even beyond COB, all of the stuff that you do to improve our city and have been doing it for so long. Thank you. You'll definitely be missed, and we'll keep in touch. It's see you later, not goodbye.
Hey.
And if I can share just one last thing for those attendees and the public, if you haven't yet had an opportunity to read Karen's resignation letter, I strongly encourage y'all to read that.
Thanks. Appreciate that call out. Okay, and a few things coming on the tails of Karen's resignation. We have known for a while, and Karen was gracious enough to sort of stay on the board waiting for her replacement. And at some point, a person has to call that quits. You were trying to step off the board, not stay on the board forever. And as we know from the mayor's office, we have had a vacancy for almost 2 years at this point on that side. And so I appreciate that a boundary is a good thing to have. So we have had and will continue to have 2 vacancies on the board. As a reminder, the board is a 9-member board, but we have been working with 8 and we'll soon be working with 7. We did get an update from the mayor's office on their approach, which is that they, because of some of the restructuring that the city did earlier this fall, they have changed their approach to filling boards and commissions. And so what we understand is that new approach will get live in January. And so hopefully we will have a better process to fill our board then and a little bit more activity. We also understand that council is working on a new slate of candidates. So hopefully something gets filled. Okay, so that is that. Additionally, We have had some discussions internally with the COB just about making more formal our approach to public comment, and knowing that Karen will be available for public comment, we should probably get ourselves organized in advance of her commentary in the future. We had some conversations back and forth about how long we want folks to have and how many slots. And I just wanted to sort of open the conversation up here to make some final determinations. So what we had talked about was, maybe 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. It sounded like there was some cohesion around availing ourselves to about 15 minutes of public comment, which is coming from the public, not time dedicated to interacting with the public on that comment. And so opening it up for conversation here. I will start if no one is filling the awkward silence, but my experience in cities is that it's typically 3 minutes. While it doesn't seem like a very long time, it is typically quite a long time. You can get a lot of words in 3 minutes, especially if you are upset. And so my suggestion would be we opt for more shorter slots rather than fewer longer slots to allow for a broader set of voices. But I am open. Dawn, I know you had suggested maybe a long period of time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I thought 5 minutes was kind of the ideal. But if we want to keep it closer to city council and other public commenting, I think 3 is fine. But for me, I just want to make sure people have opportunity to speak, and it's not just one person or 2 people every time.
Great.
Yeah, I would
Alfredo?
also be in favor of the 3 minute slot to have more voices participate and maximize that window that we'll have.
I agree.
Larry, Karen, last chance to opine on that.
Sounds good to me. I mean, we don't always have a whole lot of people coming in. I think we can be flexible with that. So I think anywhere within 3-5 minutes, I think is fine. If we don't have a whole lot of, people waiting to talk, and they go a little bit longer, it's not a big deal. But I think having a limit and letting them know that ahead of time so that they could plan that there is a limit and it just doesn't take up a big portion of the meeting is important. But yeah, I mean, that all sounds good. No strong feelings in terms of the number of minutes, but definitely in favor of having some guidelines and limitation.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, so I'll make a proposal for up to 5 slots, 3 minutes each for our public comment. We'd also talked about moving public comment to the beginning of our meetings rather than the end, just so the public doesn't have to wait too long. So if I could put that motion on the floor, if I can get a second or an
Second.
amendment.
Yeah.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Great. Okay, thanks. That's helpful to just have structure, and then it feels like people can have the information, and we'll make sure that we provide that information as part of our calendar information, etc. Okay, great. May I also have a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which I believe was November 14th?
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thanks. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Okay, the motion passes. Let me see. One more announcement is that unfortunately, our board administrator, Daniel Van Scooten, is leaving the board. He will be taking a very similar position with the state. And that position comes with a much bigger salary than we can offer. And so, what can I say about Daniel? Daniel is the heart blood of the board, and we would be in the dark ages without him in terms of our ability to execute. And so he will be greatly missed. And uh, we will be certainly seeking his replacement. We hope to get that position posted in the next few weeks. And we are working on leveraging kind of some hourly help from Daniel to help smooth the transition with a potential future board administrator. Um, one thing I wanted to ask board members, and you don't have to decide on this call, but I would like us to have a hiring committee. And so if you're interested in serving on that, if you could send me a text, that's fine, or let me know here. We have a draft of his position description, which has been updated both by him and the management committee. So I think that's in good shape. The monitor's office has been really helpful in helping move through the city budgetary processes with some of this interim steps, et cetera. And so just really appreciate the monitor's office and taking on that administrivia for the board. And yeah, so the main ask for the board is if you want to serve on a hiring committee, that would be fantastic. I imagine the bulk of that work will be sort of towards the end of January, early Feb, in terms of your own planning purposes. Questions on that, or did I miss any? I would say more words about how wonderful Daniel is, but he is currently in Thailand asleep, so it falls on internet deaf ears rather than his own ears. So, okay, and I think with that, I've covered all of our items. So with that, we can move into public comment. If folks who are on the meeting as attendees would like to make comment, you have 3 minutes. And I guess I will get my trusty phone to start moving that. And then Regan, I see you have raised your hand, so I will move you into the meeting, I think. Here you are. Go ahead and speak when you are able.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Just listening in, wow. Good luck to Karen. I have really appreciated her wisdom and learning from her about certain issues on this board. Thank you very much, Karen, and good luck to you. And I'm in shock right now that Daniel's leaving. I'm kind of rattled about that, to be honest, because I do have some concerns also about how the board will be getting written communications. So if maybe I can have that conversation with Daniel, or I don't know how we'll do that, but so I've cut my public comment down because it's too long today. So I'm going to email the rest of my comment to you so all board members can have that. And I'm assuming you already have my emails or email from this week where I had shared an article about the preliminary injunction hearing of mine that happened on the 5th of December. So I'm not going to offer any more comment to that. I will send you my public comment for that. And I will also send it to Chief Thomas so that he can reply as well, since it is part of my public comment. So I want to hit on what is most important to me right now is complaints and how they're being handled, because I do think this is a very important role for the board to stay on top of. So I'd like the board to be aware that I've received a closure letter from the monitor's office for an investigation having been completed on the 20th of November with the Denver Police Department, which involves my own complaint of DPD Sergeant Brian O'Neill and Detective Chelsea Novotny conspiring and falsifying documents to have me jailed and prosecuted. Unfortunately, with no explanation, I've not been provided with the closure letter from DPD Internal Affairs specific to those findings they investigated. I've had to do an open records request. I don't know when I'll get that letter. So I would appreciate it, Chief Thomas, if you could make sure that I get that disposition letter, and today would be good. as it remains a really bad habit of your department, clearly with your blessing, to continue to not investigate my complaints in a timely manner with honesty. And that case number is 2025-0244. Also, I filed a complaint 2025-0282 on behalf of a young woman living in homelessness, wherein she told me that she wanted an investigation into an excessive force event, but she's too afraid to take on the process alone and asked that I file the complaint on her behalf, in which I did. She told me the DPD officers used their vehicles to hit her while riding her bicycle in an attempt to get her to stop for questioning. In that disposition letter that I was provided, it stated that, quote, due to the nature of the allegations, the evidence obtained during the investigation was presented to the district attorney's office for consideration, and charges against the officers were declined. I take that very serious, and I'd like some transparency around that. So I did a records request with the DA's office after several weeks of trying to get an answer from them and supplying them with the closure letter. They state they don't produce letters for internal affairs investigations, so that's a seemingly odd response. I've asked for further clarification from the DA's office on that, and that request has been ignored since November 25th. So was there an investigation or not? There's no transparency again. So I'm guessing not. And once again, the public is being lied to, and your agency continues to target and abuse a vulnerable population because it historically gets away with doing so, Chief Thomas. I requested the body cam footage of this event and was told that because of other cases somehow associated with this event that did not lead to charges, that the BWC wouldn't be released. So another odd response that reeks of dishonesty. So,
Ms. Benson, your time has concluded. Can you use the last few seconds to sort of wrap up your commentary, please?
nope, that's fine. I'll email you the rest.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining our meeting today, and thank you for sharing your concerns with us. Board members, any questions for Ms. Benson? Okay, thank you. I do not see any other hands in the attendee list, so we can move on to our regular meeting. Chief Thomas, thank you for joining us today, and apologies about the length of our board business before you. Appreciate your flexibility. I know. Go ahead.
Sorry, could we ask Chief Thomas if he would like to respond to Ms. Benson?
Sure.
Well, certainly. So I wrote down those two case numbers that she provided, and can look into where those closure letters are that we drafted, and I think sent to OIM for their approval to be sent out. Reference the criminal complaint that was presented to the district attorney. She is correct that they don't actually provide like a decline letter similar to what OIM and DPD does. Essentially, what they do is they sign a sheet that basically says that upon contemplation of all the facts, when we present the case to them, they indicate whether or not they would accept the case for criminal charges or not. And so I'm certain in this case they elected not to accept the case for criminal charges. Often they check a box or make a notation for the reason why, whether it's not criminal in nature or unreasonable likelihood of conviction or something like that. And so I can certainly look into what that notation was.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, the letters are sent to us for our review, and we can make recommendations if we feel further information is necessary in those letters, but we don't approve them. We simply review them and make recommendations.
Thank you. I know there's always confusion about the role of the monitor's office in those closure letters. So it's certainly something that board has made recommendations both to the department and in a general process because people ascribe more authority to the monitor's office in that case than they have. And so appreciate your clarifying comment there, Liz. Okay, let's move on. Chief Thomas, I know we provided you a few questions in email in advance, and certainly we've got more on our minds. So I will open it up to you. Welcome, and we'll move into more discussion shortly.
Just real quick, sorry to interrupt. Oh, never mind. I was going to add that Reagan was still on the panel.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I just moved her. Okay, go ahead, Chief.
Anyway, good morning. I'm glad to be here, and I just want to lead with a thank you to Karen. Certainly thank you for your dedication and commitment and service to the city. I'm glad to hear that you'll not be disappearing, and I'm actually just now learning that you're a golfer, as am I, and so maybe we can run into each other on the golf course. So with that, I will go into the questions that were sent to me by Daniel, who I'm saddened to hear is also leaving. So the first question is, how often do DPD officers interact with community members possessing real or replica firearms? It's sort of the best data that I could find. On average, from 2020, currently year to date, about 1,570 times do we encounter somebody that has a weapon. Difficult to distinguish between real or replica, but that's a high of 1,700 in 2023, a low of about 1,300 in 2020, again with an average of about 1,570. So question sort of 1A is, what percentage of those interactions result in an arrest? And what I can share is that of those, on average, 1,356 of those interactions result in an arrest. So with a high in 2024 of about 1,500, and then a low in 2020 of just a little over 1,100, but an average from 2020 to current of about 1,356. Question B is, what percentage of those interactions result in a use of force? What our data shows is that about 1.6% of those interactions result in a use of force. And then specifically in question C, what percentage of those interactions results in an arrest? And so the hard number is an average of 0.47%. Of the time, so less than 0.5%. And so just to kind of explain how we got there.
Before you can continue, Chief Thomas, I think what you said was they result in arrest, but the last question was about how often do they result in a police involved shooting?
Yes.
So just want to clarify, you're talking about shooting, right?
Correct.
Officer
that is
shooting.
correct.
Okay, thanks.
That is correct. So adding up all of those arrests from 2020 through current date 2025, 8,137 arrests, resulting in 43 shootings. 38 of those shootings was an actual firearm, and then 5 of those were replica firearms. One of those occurred in 2020. Another occurred in 2023, and 3 of them have occurred thus far in 2025. So if there's no other questions on that, I'll move on to question 2.
I do have some follow-up questions on that because it's really helpful. Serving on the board, we're presented a lot with sort of the officer involved shootings and that, and so it gives, at least for me, it has given a skewed perspective on like the volume of interactions that involve violence between the police and and the community. What I wanted to ask is a slightly different question. So there was an officer involved shooting either last week or the week before where there was an individual coming out of like a garden shed with a sharp garden tool who was killed by the police having a very short interaction with him. And I guess I'm sort of mystified why tasers are not deployed more often, or I'm wondering if you can kind of give us similar statistics where the non-lethal, force is applied. Because in that particular case, it just seemed like, is he really going to commit like a lot of violence using a giant, lawnmower blade? Like it just seemed like a disproportionate response in my mind, and I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. So a few things. First, I'd have to pull some data on our taser deployments and taser usage. So I can certainly do that. Prepare that either at some later date or in our next quarterly session.
Sure.
What I will say in this particular incident, so it was not a garden tool. It actually was a it looked like a very long dagger, wooden handle, and a long metal piece that came to a very sharp point. Looked like a dagger, but it turned out to be an instrument that people use to sharpen knives. And so how that interaction occurred is homeowner, or the resident saw, they weren't even home. They saw on their Ring camera that someone had entered sort of the shed that was on their porch and was rummaging around in there. The officers arrived, could tell that they were still in there. They were concealed within this structure. And then not knowing what that individual was going to exit the shed with, they both drew their firearms. And so when this individual exited with that object, they ordered him to put the object down, which he actually did. And then when they directed him to come toward them so that they could take him into custody, he very quickly grabbed the object and then advanced on one of the officers, prompting them to fire. And so in that particular instance, I don't think it would have been part of their training, not knowing what that individual would come out of that shed with, for them to arm themselves with tasers. And then the speed at which that situation unfolded, it would have been difficult for them to transition from the firearms that they were holding to a less lethal option.
I mean, this is a really dumb question, but could they not just run away from a man wielding a giant blade? Like it just, to me, it was such a like disconnected interaction. I guess I just love your, like, the first impulse should not be to murder people. I'm like, how did this guy get killed because he was carrying a giant blade like that? I cannot get my head sort of around that. So
I guess the best way that I can explain it to you is that this individual was in very close proximity, so probably within 5 or 6 feet of the officers. And so while certainly they could have turned and run, that's assuming that they would have been able to outrun this individual. And it wasn't like he just picked it up and was taunting the officers. He was advancing in what I think is reasonably perceived as an aggressive manner. And so I think that it was their clear understanding that it was his intent to harm them. And so that is what prompted the officer's response.
Sure. Tammy, hands up.
And I will qualify all of this by saying that, this is my impression of having watched the videos, having watched the interviews of the officers. But ultimately, it's not my decision as to whether or not their actions were lawful. That's the district attorney, and so we'll certainly wait on that.
Right, that makes sense. Tamisha, go ahead.
So I just had a quick question. So this wouldn't have been a case where they could shoot to disarm, and because he wasn't carrying a gun. I know that he was advancing towards them, but they couldn't have shot to disarm. Is that not
part of our training? So we And I think it's important to make it clear that we don't shoot to kill. And we also don't shoot we don't shoot weapons out of people's hands. We basically stop to shoot to stop the threat, and so stop the advancement of the individual. And so, I think if you had the opportunity to watch the video, which was released publicly, you could see that immediately after the officers fired, they began with life-saving measures. And so certainly was not their desire to kill this individual. Certainly that was the unfortunate outcome. I think their focus was on stopping the threat. And once that threat had been neutralized, they immediately, I think, worked to save that individual's life.
Right. That's what I see from the video as well. Thank you.
I mean, easier to save his life if he is not shot. So I guess my head is still a little bit spinning on this. Do board members have other questions on this topic? Okay, let's move on to question 2, Chief. Thanks.
You bet. So question 2 is, what is the current status of the 5-month no-cost contract extension with Flock Safety for license plate readers? Has it received all necessary approvals? And the answer to that is the $0 Flock ALPR contract extension through March 31st has been fully executed, which means that the vendor and the mayor have both signed the contract.
Before you move on, Chief, Tamisha, your hand's up. Is it up from the previous question?
No, it was about that. Just had a question about who will be operating the drones. Would it be your staff or would it be Flock?
Well, we're talking about. Well, I think we're moving on to Flock drones in here in a moment, but it will be our staff that will be operating the drones as well. So then I think so. Question 2A.
Before you move on, sorry. So there was a period of time where we were uncontracted with Flock this fall, where their cameras were still operational, but we did not have contract provisions. So can you tell me what surety we can provide the public that their information was securely stored, that the law was followed during that time, that we've got confirmation from Flock that they didn't revert back to previous protocols, for example, national enrollment in the national network, right? Like, can you just talk about sort of what happened during the period where we did not have a legal contract with them?
So I can verify that that access had been shut off quite some time ago, last spring, I believe, outside of the state of Colorado. It was shut down even further in October of this year. That has remained in effect. We continue to do compliance checks to make sure that there have been no violations either by Flock themselves or by our own personnel. And while we haven't done this yet, we have, and I think we've been public about this. Flock kind of created for us sort of an individualized system that only has a certain list of Denver approved searchable offenses in a drop-down menu. So you have to select one of those offenses in the drop-down menu. No federal agencies or agents can have access to the database, and there's a complete ban on immigration enforcement or use to identify people that are, seeking reproductive care, and so those are all in place. The hope going forward is that all other Colorado agencies will either sign that agreement, agreeing to those terms and agreeing to the penalties that would follow violating those terms. And if they don't sign it, then they will not be provided access.
Okay, so just to clarify, because it's not always clear to folks, I think, how that network works. So Denver PD is subscribed to a Colorado network where all of the other police departments in Colorado are members, or not all of the police departments, but any police department with Flock is also a member. Is that correct?
That's correct. But currently, all of those other Colorado agencies cannot access Denver data.
Okay. Because the risk in the past was that, sure, Denver provides protocols, but what actually happened was that Loveland provided Denver-based data to federal agents, and in addition to being subscribed to the national network. But because of the way the networking is set up, it creates a very leaky data pool. And so what you're saying is that you have tidied up those leaks.
That's correct.
Okay.
So,
Tamisha, go ahead.
so is it clear that does DPD own that data?
Yes, we
Or
own the
does
data.
okay, so are you guys housing the data or is Flock housing the data?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't have all the technical responses to those questions. But my understanding is that it's our data. We can determine who that data gets shared with. Right now, we're not sharing that data with anyone. And Flock has committed to not sharing that data either.
Okay. So yeah, so where I was trying to get to, and think that's actually that was another piece I was looking for too, is if as long as the Denver Police Department owns the data, then you have control over it. But if Flock has control over it, do you have restrictions in place so they can't use that to train any of their like AI models or their, any other uses that they, for any other product lines that they might release, just to make sure
That's
that the data is
yeah,
still confidential to DPD?
yeah, that's correct. And also along those lines, we understand that sometimes um, entities like Flock and Axon, they sort of iterate and upgrade their software and their product, and there's often an opt-in. So like they just kind of update your program to in keeping with their updates, or you can opt out, and we have opted out. And so all of those features that they may start to include, relative to AI and those other things, we have opted out of that.
Thank you.
Karen, I see your hands up.
Yes, Chief, good morning, and I appreciate the sentiments that you expressed about my departure. Of course, I have more questions.
That's
So,
fine.
police officers have access to the data unlimited?
No. So maybe I don't completely understand your question, but so basically there is a database. The only way that officers get access to information within the database is by conducting a search. And so the only way that they can conduct a search is if they have, if they're investigating a crime, and then there's a drop-down menu that has all of the various crime codes in it. So they have to select one of those, and then they have to, identify their other search parameters, and then it only provides them the information specific to that search. So if they're looking for a plate number that belongs to a stolen car, or that was reported to them by witnesses in a homicide investigation or a shooting, they're entering that plate number, they're entering that information that they have, and all it's pulling up for them is information specific to that license plate that they entered.
Do you recall a case several months ago where a police officer actually tracked down a citizen here in Denver with the charge of a type of theft using the system that we're talking about?
I don't have a specific recollection of the system being used to track down a suspect in a theft. I do know that the system has been used to locate individuals involved in a number of crimes, anywhere from homicides to sex assaults to non-fatal shootings.
So in that type of scenario, the officer uses the database to find a certain crime, and then they confront, once they find that plate number, they confront that person at their residence and to make an arrest? Is that how that process works?
Um, Maybe not exactly. And so typically what, because, usually that the system is not going to help you understand, where someone lives. I mean, if we have the license plate, we typically have, the address where that registered owner lives. And so, we don't even need the system in order to identify where they live if it in fact is the vehicle that's being used by the registered owner. So, but typically what Flock does is it helps you identify directions of travel or frequently crossed locations. And so we may get a sense that that the vehicle was headed south on I-25 and continued south and continued to hit on Flock cameras as it exited the city or the state. We might identify that over the course of time, it seems to have either most recently crossed this particular Flock camera, so it's likely in this vicinity, or it frequently crosses this Flock camera, and so they frequently enter into this area, and so it really just kind of narrows a search area. And so certainly, if we with that narrowed search area, start looking in a particular area and then happen to see the vehicle, and this is what frequently happens. We see the vehicle parked in a driveway, parked in front of a house, and so that certainly would lead to an opportunity to try to make contact.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
You bet.
I think, does every officer have the ability to perform the search in the Flock database?
Yes.
Okay, so is there any restrictions or requirements that they have to do in order to get access, or is this just automatically granted to them?
Well, they have to be trained on using the system, and then once they're trained on the system, then they have access to the system. And again, this is just DPD officers, and so even though we have Denver task forces that have federal agents that are embedded in those task forces, they do not have access.
Along those same lines, Chief, I'm wondering if there will be an audit log that's recording how often the system's being utilized, what cases are being looked at that you would be open to sharing with the public on a regular basis to alleviate some of those concerns around transparency and usage.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And so, yes, there is an audit trail that we can and we frequently do look at to make sure that that there are no inappropriate uses. It also flags, things that seem questionable or out of the ordinary, concerning trends and things like that. I think we need to continue to engage the city attorney's office for exactly what material we can actually make public, because these are parts of criminal investigations, and so there's a lot of information relative to a criminal investigation that we would be precluded from sharing. But certainly understand the community concern, and so certainly want to try to resolve that community concern by some sort of sharing. We'll just have to get solid on what exactly that is.
A follow-up question on that, just based on my service on the surveillance task force. One of the most challenging aspects of understanding the scope and implications of Flock is that it has been very difficult to get basic data in terms of Flock use cases, access, right? And I don't know if that is a matter of the department having a lot on its plate and unable to produce the data, but it has taken many months for members of that task force to get access to the information they've requested. And so, I would love for the public to get access to information, but I would also like for, city partners to be able to thoroughly audit and vet data that is being generated by that system. So I'm curious, based on sort of what we have seen and learned over the past many months, what improvements will be made to the availability and accessibility of data for city use purposes.
Yeah, so I think what needs to happen is we need to figure out a way to, because the data that we have provided or that we would like to provide needs to be scrubbed of those things that we just can't release. And so I think we just need to identify a way to do that in a reasonable manner that isn't particularly onerous on the system or on us.
Okay,
But
so
we
finding better ways for data sharing, sounds like,
Yes.
scrubbing and data sharing. Okay. Okay, Karen, your hand is still up. Is that from your previous question?
Was I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Your arm's getting tired. Your virtual arm's getting tired. So any other questions on this topic? I know I've got a number of questions on the next myself.
Yeah, I just, Chief, I had a question just about the recent publicity around the vulnerability of flock safety. And is DPD concerned about that? Is the city doing anything to push flock to improve safety? It's been kind of all over the news in terms of how easily flock is able to be hacked.
Yes, and so I mean, Flock will tell you that they've never been hacked, and I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is that they have really tried to be good partners. Really, I think making sort of the Denver model for how their system is used here in Denver, and then ultimately in Colorado. And so, they do continue to make improvements. Now, whether or not they make improvements that will satisfy the city council, the surveillance task force, that's something that I can't speak to. I mean, I believe that we as a city are committed to ALPR technology, recognizing the value and the benefit of that. Now, if Flock is what we move forward with, I can't tell you that it is. I know that there are other players in the space. Maybe some of these players are able to engender more trust from city partners and community, but that remains to be seen.
Just to highlight what Larry commented on there is a great deal of discussion about data from Flock being used by actors in Russia, data breaches, et cetera. And so, somebody who's worked in technology a long time, you're either hacked or you're not, or you're breached or you're not. But what's interesting about the way that the Flock network works, right, is that so many people have access to this vast network of data. And so it could be the case that they were not breached because there are so many actors who can get accounts to leverage and access large amounts of data. And so in this case, my perspective is both things could actually be true. And that is part of the problem, right? And so it's just something for us to think about in terms of this corporation or others that we're engaging with. Questions from other board members?
So there also was in the news that they had also Flock had signed contracts with the Ring doorbell cameras so that they can access that and make that a part of their network as well. Does DPD have any concern regarding that?
Well, I guess my concern really is with the public concern that I'm sure that generates. And so I think that certainly leads to reasonable concerns that I think the community has about the level of access that they have, what they intend to do with that access. And so that is certainly concerning. I will say that that whatever enhancements are created by that additional exposure are things that we would be opting out of.
And I don't know if you can answer in this forum, but maybe if you could send an email, it would be great. But how does it affect your chain of custody when you're collecting evidence with the flock? And I'm sure if this is not the correct form, you don't have to answer.
I mean, just really quickly. So, so you know, images are captured. You know, when every vehicle crosses a flock camera, that the image of the rear portion of that vehicle is captured, and then it falls off, I believe, after 30 days. And so it's only retained for 30 days unless it is tagged, because it's tied to a criminal event. So the way that would work is if we were looking for a license plate, because it was it was on a vehicle that was used in a shooting, that search and everything that we uncovered during that search would be retained beyond that 30-day window. But anything that wasn't tagged, isn't tied to a specific criminal event, rolls off every 30 days. So just like body worn camera, just like our Halo cameras, if it's not tagged in order to be saved and like downloaded to evidence.com, it's gone in 30 days.
And what confirmation do you get of it being gone?
Another tech question that I don't think that I can answer, but I can get the answer for you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Before we move on, I just want to acknowledge and thank you, Chief, for leaving the door open to move away from Flock. Because to me, it doesn't make sense that as other cities are canceling their contracts with Flock because of a breach of trust and lack of accountability, that we would be rushing to make business with the company like this. It makes no sense. So to just flag that the potential is there still to not keep rushing into bed with somebody that we know is untrustworthy.
Fair.
Let's move on to the next question then, because I think it relates.
I'm maybe lost. Are we at 2A or are we moving on to 3?
Let's see. Oh, I mean, sure, 2A. Forgot we hadn't answered that yet. Yeah, let's do 2A and then.
I think we've talked a lot about it. So 2A is 5 months will be over before we know it. That 5-month period ends March 31st. How does DPD plan to approach the next decision point? And so the answer to that is in partnership with the mayor's office. We will continue to work with the surveillance task force to identify measures that can mitigate risk and concern with the existing Flock ALPR platform and other technologies. We do strongly believe in the effectiveness of ALPR in crime reduction and will continue to work toward utilizing the technology in a transparent and responsible way to positively impact crime in the city. We'll continue to engage in the discussion with interested parties and solicit feedback to determine the next steps. And as Alfredo acknowledged, that may or may not be with Flock. We recognize a lot of the damage that has been done. Certainly working to mitigate that. I think that Flock is working really hard to try to mitigate that, but can't speak to the damage that's been done. I can only speak to the commitment that the city has, the Denver Police Department has, keeping the community safe. I find myself in a lot of community spaces where they really want an ALPR tool, to be part of that strategy that we're using to keep people safe. But Flock may or may not be that partner.
I'll just say the city has already had an ALPR tool in our toolkit for a long time. And so I guess, we can do many things at once, right? And it perhaps doesn't have to be done with Flock. It leads to the next question, which, in light of the damage done, in light of the risks of this fairly loose vendor for what is an enormous amount of public data, can you just help us understand how we got to an additional contract with Flock in the middle of this sort of political morass? I guess, sort of in light of the outrage, how did we sign yet one more contract? And can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So as you know, we started with a small number of cameras. We ultimately expanded to now 111 cameras across the city. A number of those cameras we received funding assistance from some members of City Council. And so right now we have a pretty significant network that had been tied to a statewide network and a national network. And so, again, believing in the technology and understanding that if we were to decide to go to another vendor, that likely would cause us having to rip out existing infrastructure, input new infrastructure, which I think would leave a period of time where we don't have any kind of ALPR technology available to us. And so I just think that the city was hopeful to be able to move forward with an existing model because we had the infrastructure in place. And so I think that's the reason why we continued to engage with Flock, because if we had decided that Flock was not the right answer, if we'd have made that decision in July or made that decision in October, we would have had a significant period of time where we have nothing, and we continue to see the value of ALPR.
Okay. And then the question follows into number 3, which is, we signed an extension on a contract that was already controversial, and then we signed another kind of contract for something that's probably even more. And so can you just sort of help me understand? There was political outrage on a technology that was not well managed. We signed an extension to that contract, and then we signed another agreement for drones using Flock technology in the middle of this public outcry. And what I will also say is that Flock is by no means the only vendor in this space. And there are a dozen. And so can you just help, how did we get to this decision? Why do we keep going back to Flock, especially in light of drones that are not, their sort of specialty?
So a couple of reasons that I'll describe here. So as you well know, Major City Chiefs and IACP, International Association of Chiefs of Police, was here in October. So 18,000 or more public safety officials from across the world were here. With that comes a lot of vendors that have that have various products. We have, as has been discussed in this forum, been interested in drones as first responders. We have had drones for some time, but we've been interested in expanding into drones as a first responder. And so with that knowledge and understanding, both Flock and Skydio came to us and said, hey, we will agree to no-cost contracts in order to give you pilot periods of time to test our drones for your drone as a first responder program. And so while certainly the Flock name is troubling, there is a distinction between license plate readers and the data that is stored there and drone technology. And so we did sign a no-cost 1-year trial period contract with Flock. And to date, even though we signed that contract some time ago, right now, what we're working on is they are identifying dock locations to maximize effectiveness on the platform. We're waiting for the availability of hardware, as you can imagine, because this is one of the larger and much more popular platforms in the space. There's a lot of people that are after flock drone technology, and so we're kind of in the queue for when hardware can be delivered to us. And so we actually don't anticipate having any flock Aerodome drone launches until probably the end of the first quarter in 2026.
Okay. Can you help me understand why you wouldn't like go with Skydio? I understand you have Skydios and you're using them on Flock, platform, but like Axon, which is a huge vendor for you all, also has a program, I mean, a quick Google search, there's 15 companies that do this. So can you help me understand like why did why did we just go with Flock in the middle of this like pretty strong public outreach?
We did also sign a no-cost contract with Skydio, and they are actually, they were actually quicker to the punch. They were able to do installs, and so we are actively engaged in that pilot right now. And again, understanding the concern over the Flock name, and understanding that there are a number of players in the space. We engaged a number of them, and Flock and Skydio were the only ones that agreed to move forward with a no-cost contract. And recognizing the financial picture that the city is currently in, we thought that it would be valuable to take advantage of that no-cost opportunity to test the two platforms, see which one works best. And again, if the Flock name becomes just too toxic, regardless of whether we're talking about ALPR technology or drone technology, we do recognize that there are other players in the space. One significant one, Skydio, we're already engaged with.
Okay, yeah, and just to sort of put a finer point on it, Flock's business is data, and how they gather that data depends on the different kinds of infrastructure and the different kinds of use cases, but they're only in the business to gather data, right? And so the concern that came up with the ALPRs is not like the function of the cameras. It's that they don't have good data management practices. They don't have practices we can audit. We don't understand how their algorithms are working, and it's very hard for us to determine how our information is being shared and with whom. And so the concern is not like it's a drone versus an ALPR. The concern is that we are dealing with a company who has standards that are too loose for our community's preferences with regard to our community's information. So I just want to say that out loud. Are there other board member questions on this topic? Okay, we can move on for now from this. Plenty of questions, and I think, recognizing, let's see, we'll probably be talking to you again in the March timeframe. So if you can come prepared to that meeting with like, where are we with all of this? I think that would be helpful. In the meantime, of course, see you at the task force, surveillance task force meetings.
Yes.
The last question that we had provided in advance regards a community member who had come to our meeting when EDOS Gardner was at the meeting, I think, and the individual was at the No Kings protests and experienced some very hostile treatment from the police. And so she did not know, but was asking sort of the wrong person about that at the time. And I think Daniel had provided you with her questions, or hopefully you got informed on that. But can you just tell us a little bit more about the interactions of the police with the No Kings protesters?
I can. And so the two specific questions were, did DPD officers deploy tear gas at any point on that day? And the answer to that is no. We don't deploy tear gas. We don't even have access to tear gas. We have access to OC spray or pepper balls that have OC in them. We also use inert smoke as a diversionary tactic. And so the only things that were deployed on that day were smoke and then pepper balls for area denial. And then the second part of that question is it appropriate for officers to pursue protesters who are dispersing? And I guess the answer to that question is it depends. If they are dispersing and that's what we're trying to get them to do, then certainly there would be no need to pursue them. However, if there are individuals that have committed a crime and it's our intent to take them into custody, then certainly we would make that effort to take them into custody. Secondarily, if they are, and this probably I think gets into what actually happened during the No Kings protest, if they are moving to a location that we are trying to secure, i.e. the highway, then yes, we would, I think, pursue them to try to cut them off or deny them access to the highway. And so that is what occurred during the No Kings protest. And so just kind of a snapshot of that day. And I know that there were a number of members of the community that were there. About 15,000 people were recorded to have been there from the very early part of the day. The very early part of the day was extremely peaceful, no significant incidents at all. And then large groups began to march. And again, no concerns with the march. The only concern that we really had relative to the various marches is I think they actually headed in 3 different directions, which created a staffing concern for us to make sure that we could manage each leg of this demonstration appropriately. And then the most concerning thing is that at 2 separate times, they members of, I won't say they, because I think it's actually a very small number, made attempts to access the highway at 2 separate locations. And so there was quite a bit of engagement to try to prevent that from happening. We ultimately were successful in preventing them from getting onto the highway. Hopefully everybody can understand the concern that that would present. Not only is it extremely dangerous for those demonstrators, dangerous for officers, but also dangerous for the motoring public. And so that's something that that we, I think, fiercely defend. You know, we are perfectly okay with large gatherings on the Capitol steps and out in front of the Capitol or the city and county building, various other city buildings, Palantir, other locations where groups of demonstrators choose to gather. Also, perfectly fine for folks to march and even occupy portions of the street or the entire street, even without permits. But once they begin to engage in something that is clearly dangerous, like trying to get on the highway, that is something that we will use force to try to prevent. And so ultimately that day we made 13 arrests. There were a number of engagements where we did deploy either smoke or pepper ball, again, to try to deny people from that area that they were trying to access. And so that is what that day looked like. But there was no point in time where we deployed tear gas. And the only irritant that was ever deployed was pepper ball.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions on that from board members? I'll ask a question while folks are thinking about theirs. How far does the department push protesters back, and why push back instead of holding a line? Seems like anytime you start pushing, you start to get into potential for tussle as opposed to just standing still.
Yeah. So I think if you watch most of our engagements with demonstrators, that is exactly what we do, is hold a line. In fact, more often than not, we don't even present ourselves. We allow the crowd to kind of gather and do whatever they're going to do, even when they start to, take over Colfax or Broadway or the 16th Street. We typically just block off traffic ahead of them and behind them so that they don't get overtaken. We block off side streets, and so there's very little presence, if you will, when we engage with demonstrators. When there is something critical that we're trying to guard, or when it's been identified that it is a unlawful assembly, maybe because they're engaging in some kind of violent behavior, throwing objects, lighting things on fire, then and only then is when we start to move them out of an area.
Okay. And then is there a timeliness expectations once you're asking folks to move, and it can probably take a long time for a crowd to sort of change directions, right? So what is that like?
Yeah, fair. And so first of all, I want to make it clear that that our teams that are assigned to these demonstrations, they're in it for the day. And so there's no point in time where we're tired of this and we need to start pushing people away so that we can all go home. So if they want to engage peacefully for a significant period of time, we're fine with them doing that. When we do declare an unlawful assembly because of illegal acts, then we make announcements, and along with those announcements are times that we not only do we make multiple announcements over loudspeaker, making sure that they are heard by the crowd, and then there's a significant period of time that we wait before we start to move people. So there is, I think, a reasonable amount of time after we've declared an unlawful assembly, after we've made announcements, after we've given them a time frame by which they need to move or disperse. There's a reasonable amount of time in order for people to begin to do just that. And typically, what we see is that the large majority of those individuals do that.
Questions on this?
Looking back on the comment that was made last week about the protest, Chief, I think therein lies the conflict, that she was a bystander protesting, following all the instructions, and because of the actions of a small handful of individuals, they were then caught in the, call it pepper spray, call it tear gas, call it whatever you want. That's where they felt harmed and wronged. So as we go through, the disbursement orders or keeping the group safe, and being able to mitigate the distinction between who are those antagonizers and the provocateurs, and how then do the actions that they have impact the larger crowd.
Yes. Yeah. So first of all, that's one of the reasons why we use pepper ball, because it can be directed much more precisely. And so I think we can identify either locations that we're really trying to guard or specific pockets of individuals that are particularly problematic, and kind of direct the irritant there. And so I think that we recognize that the overwhelming majority of folks that come out for demonstrations are there to do so peacefully, and they do so peacefully. We recognize that there are even some hangers on that continue to stay, even though those that are intent on causing harm remain. And we know that there are some that kind of stick with that crowd as well. And so, we're somewhat sensitive to that. And that's why we give plenty of announcements and opportunity for people to leave. And then, when we make arrests, we're not making mass arrests. We are pinpointing specific individuals that we have documented criminal charges against in order to move forward. And those are the only individuals that we seek out for arrest. And then, I mean, I can certainly, sympathize with someone who was really just there to watch what was going on and wasn't really quote unquote part of the problem. But I think all of you here that have children would probably advise your children, when the troublemakers start to cause trouble, that's probably time for you to go home. And so I think that's kind of an advisement that I would give those individuals that really are not intending to cause harm or cause trouble, but for whatever reason continue to stay in the space next to those people who are. That's just not a place where it's safe for you to be, because you likely are going to encounter some of the measures that are used to disperse those individuals, specifically pepper ball.
Okay, any follow-ups on that? Okay, shifting gears, and I know we're in it for the long haul at this point, but obviously we're not done with EBD. I'm wondering if you can give us an update on where everything is with that.
Yes. So as I think I've communicated before, the policy and other documents are still available on the website for comment. We continue to review that for comments. We've engaged the Office of the Independent Monitor a number of times, who has provided some thoughtful feedback. We have incorporated all of this feedback and are, I think, near a point where we can forward. I've communicated with Monitor Castle recently about our desire to send her a draft policy in the very near future. And so that is the next step, is to send her the most recent iteration of a draft policy that includes a lot of the concerns that I have heard, a lot of the feedback that I have received, to include that of the monitor's office. And so that is the next step. And so once that happens, and I will wait for feedback that she has from there.
Okay, and then steps after that, we just plays in the head.
So, I mean, ultimately, where I want to get to is where we launch. I would say probably a 1-year pilot of the program, but I don't want to do that without giving Ms. Castle an opportunity to provide further feedback on what is submitted to her, and also incorporate any other feedback that is received between now and then.
Okay, Tamisha?
Have you identified the community in which you wanted to launch the pilot in, or is it just going to be the whole metro area?
It's going to be citywide. I think that restricting it to like a district, I think would be too restrictive. I don't think that we would get a significant enough sample size in order to identify its effectiveness.
Tamisha, follow-ups on that? Okay,
Oh,
Karen?
thank you.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, then okay, thank you.
Karen?
Your understanding that Director Gardner would need to sign off on this policy before it would be implemented as a pilot?
Yes, I do recognize that I would need Director Gardner's approval. We've been in conversation quite a bit about this process.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Alfredo. I see you come off mute.
Chief, we had a really generative and productive conversation in November with the what is it, Julia, the police union?
Yep.
And the biggest takeaway around that, one, not only around the how botched the entire rollout of this was, but in exploring the opportunity to continue to build additional capacity to avoid all the bottlenecks in the review process and the lengthy timelines, not only um, the lengthy timelines, on your end too. From this conversation around EBD, I've heard a lot of the onus of responsibility incorrectly placed on the OIM, that the review time is taking too long and so on, and the data says otherwise. And what we heard is that a big chunk of that delay in that timeline is coming from DPD's end and not having the capacity internally to process all of these cases. So before thinking that this EBD is a foregone conclusion and we're just going to accept whatever edits and tweaks when we've made it very clear that we don't agree with this whole like full stop, that there's also then the potential for building up the capacity internally to mitigate all of these delays on your side of the street. So making sure that that's an avenue that is still explored around how we can streamline the process as a whole.
Sure, certainly. And so, those of you that have heard me speak about um, where we are and how we've gotten to where we are have heard me say that I place no blame anywhere on the length of the process. Not laying anything at the feet of OIM, and even committing to the necessity of having a full investigation, which is our responsibility. And so I would challenge the notion that we don't have the capacity in internal affairs to investigate cases, because I think we do. I think we've added to the complement of investigators there. We have also done things to to spread workload across. I think it's really just the nature of the oversight. And so, and again, when I say that, that doesn't mean that it's the monitor is the problem. It's kind of the back and forth when the investigation is turned over to the monitor's office, and then there's that back and forth discussion about the most appropriate finding, the most appropriate outcome. Those are the things that I think add to the length of time that a case takes for closure. And so while I have no desire to shortchange the investigation itself, I do think that there's an opportunity to select certain investigations, low-level investigations, that don't necessarily have to go through that back and forth process and then ultimately wind up at the end of a very long line. The other thing is that we're really only talking about half of the reason or the need for a solution. The other is that I don't think that the outcomes for these low-level cases being, written or oral reprimands is standalone is an appropriate outcome when the desire is to change behavior. And so I think that the benefit of the educational process that's been developed is getting to that. How do we best assure that this mistake will not happen again? So, but again, we'll continue. The director and I, we meet quarterly to discuss trends. So always we'll have my ears open for opportunities for us to further streamline the process and reduce the length of time that even the most serious of cases takes to get through the process. Because again, When we have serious discipline cases where people need to be removed from the force or need to suffer significant consequences, I want to do that as quickly as we possibly can too.
Alfredo, follow up on that. I guess one thing to say is in the lack of blame ascribed to challenging parts of the problem, one could also see a lack of assumption of accountability in terms of the part of the problem that the DPD owns and the duration and timeframes that DPD fully controls. And so I think that's always been a challenge that we've had. It's fine for, sort of nobody to be the fall guy, but also like each of us plays a part. And so how might we improve both our own parts, but then our collaboration across the parts, I think is really where we've always been in terms of this challenge. Karen, I see your hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Anything else for the chief? I know we have a bunch more questions. Of course, there's a lot going on with you all. And I want to be mindful that we had asked the monitor's office to provide insights into their semi-annual report. So I want to make sure we don't run out of time for that. But board members, would you like to continue with the chief or, begin our transition to the monitor's office? Hearing nothing, I will leave room for one more question for the chief, and then we'll start to transition to the monitor. So any additional questions from the board? While people are thinking of their questions, I will say that a pilot has a beginning and an end, defined metrics for success, and key roles and responsibilities. Is that what you have in mind in terms of this pilot?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Well, hearing no other questions from the board, let us transition monitor to you. Chief, thank you as always for candidly answering our questions and engaging with us today. Obviously a lot to discuss and just appreciate the opportunity to connect with you on that.
Certainly. Thank you. And Karen, hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, monitor.
Thank you.
I have a PowerPoint. Do I just share my screen?
You should. Multiple participants. Go ahead and try sharing. If that doesn't work, I can.
Host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay, got it. I got you. Can you try now?
Okay. Let's see. Okay, you see there we go. As you know, we issue an annual report and a semi-annual report. This is our semi-annual report for the year of 2025. The next one. We have key OIM responsibilities. Those are set forth in the ordinance. We did highlight some policy overview that we did at the beginning of this year and continue to do. Specifically, suspected overdoses in DSD jails. The number of drug overdose related incidents within the jails has increased in recent years. In response, the DSD has established a prevention, detection, and prosecution task force to reduce I have a cold. Reduce the introduction of contraband while supporting individuals suffering from substance misuse disorders, enhance the capability of detecting drugs inside the jails, and take legal action against those, take legal action against those who successfully introduced contraband inside the jail facilities. The OIM is part of that task force, and we do meet I believe it's quarterly, and those meetings continue to occur, and ideas and developments continue to occur. The OIM will review the status of current efforts and make recommendations of more steps are needed to be taken to interdict controlled substances contraband in jail facilities. Kind of together with that, investigations into non-fatal suspected overdoses. As the board knows, for quite some time, the OIM was concerned about the lack of administrative investigations related to suspected overdose incidents inside the DSG jails, and made direct recommendations to the Department of Safety. On July 25th, 2025, which was actually, I believe, his last day, Executive Director Saldate directed the opening of administrative investigations into suspected overdose incidents in DSD jail facilities, which is really an important move forward. And we're are very glad that that was done. And like with all administrative investigations, the OIM will review each investigation and, if necessary, make recommendations. And also, this feeds into our review and consideration of any potential further recommendations. Regarding education-based discipline, a good majority of the first year was taken up with education-based discipline and continues to do so. The OIM does not support EBD, full stop. If enacted, EBD will upend the current DPD discipline system by eliminating the possible imposition of discipline for certain misconduct violations. I'll just say I continue to hear my disagreement with this, and I continue to hear from the chief, is just the solution is not to have OIM input. And I think the question remains is if we have a disagreement, how is that going to be resolved? By removing accountability and transparency from discipline, EBD will substantially undermine community trust in policing. And despite our strong opposition to EBD, the OIM has worked diligently to provide recommendations through its review of draft EBD policies in March, July, and August of 2025. As the chief stated, I have spoken to the chief. I've also spoken to Director Gardner and have been assured that no new policy, that once the final definitive draft policy is completed, it will be shared with the OIM for our review, input, and recommendations, and will not be rolled out until we have had the opportunity to do so, if it is rolled out. The OIM recommends that DPD immediately suspend the development of the proposed EBD program. Our position is this has not been properly vetted with the community. The community has not been properly engaged in input as to this very, very important change in the discipline system, and the manner in which it has been rolled out is insufficient and not in line with how the original the matrix system was created, and it continues to be deficient in that sense. So it shouldn't be rolled out until there is a task force that can review the policy line by line, issue by issue, and hear the input from community, as opposed to a kind of whack-a-mole, haphazard meeting with community groups in different places and different time with different information. It's too important. The city and county of Denver should not expose itself to risk based upon an experimental system of discipline. And before continuing to develop the program, the DPD should convene a task force to determine whether the EBD program is consistent with community goals and expectation for officer accountability. This year, the OIM was audited. In 2024, the Denver Auditor's Office began an audit of the OIM. The audit concluded on September 18th of 2025. The final audit report presents 4 findings and 6 recommendations. Although the OIM does not agree with all of the findings and rationale behind the 6 recommendations, our office agreed to implement the recommendations, which include conducting a further review and evaluation of the OIM ordinance, Denver Revised Municipal Code, Section 2-371, etc., and internal policies. The first time we have published information in aggregate form, aggregate information about investigations and discipline reviews specifically. In collaboration with the city's Technology Services Department, the OIM developed a database on the Salesforce platform to store detailed information about its DPD and DSD investigation and discipline reviews. For background, the OIM has been trying to accomplish this for years, many times creating its own internal platform, only having the city to later say, no, it isn't compliant with the city, must be done by the city in compliance with the city. And this has gone on for years. So finally, in 2022, the city TS department agreed to put together a technology service database for us, which is called Salesforce. So the development of this database was crucial for the OIM's ability to present information in statistical and summary form about the OIM's assessment of sufficiency of investigations and the appropriateness of disciplinary actions as required by ordinance. We finally, through getting the process uploaded, working through it in 2024, are at a point where we feel we can begin to start mining some of the data that we have been collecting. Of the 200, and published this statistic, of the 216 cases closed by DPD in the first half of 2025, the OIM returned 34.7% for additional work. Of the 178 cases closed by the DSD in the first half of 2025, the OIM returned 56.2 cases for additional work. In regards to EBD, the function of the OIM is to have input in discipline, and EBD eliminates the opportunity for us to have that input and that back and forth. And when you see a statistic like 34.7%, that shows the amount of work that the OIM is doing and the amount of engagement that is necessary in order to conduct oversight. And EBD will impact that. DPD monitoring, complaints against DPD officers. There was 190 community complaints reported in the first half of 2025. That is a 28% increase from 2024. Excuse me, 47 internal complaints reported in the first half of 2025, which is a 6% decrease, excuse me, from 2024. I would just caution you in terms of percentages. You have the numbers here that I think are a better indicator. Excuse me. Of what numbers we are talking about. And again, this is a snapshot of the first 6 months. This isn't the entire year. And I've been asked, is this significant? Can we take away any meaning or assumptions from this? Certainly is something that we will keep our eyes on, but this can be impacted by a variety of reasons. And just simply lets us know that it's something that we need to keep an eye on and to see if that trend continues. DPD discipline and commendations. 7 officers were terminated. 6 officers retired or resigned prior to the completion of the disciplinary process. And 4 officers were suspended. There were 181 commendations awarded to officers. DSD monitoring, complaints against DSD deputies. There were 104 community inmate complaints recorded in the first half of 2025. That's a 12% increase from 2024, from the first 6 months of 2024. 219 internal complaints recorded in the first half of 2025. Excuse me one second. I feel like I'm never going to get better. 219 internal complaints recorded in the first half of 2025. 14%. That is a 14% increase from 2023. Oops. Regarding discipline and commendations, 8 deputies retired or resigned prior to the completion of the disciplinary process. 2 deputies were suspended, and there were 132 awarded commendations to deputies. And this is our contact information. That is the presentation I gave to City Council earlier this week, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. With regard to the DSD cases, a few years ago, they had gone up really significantly because of the body-worn camera deployment that had real challenges in training, and then there was some cultural challenges that were on top of that training. And so what I'm looking at in your slide is that actually hasn't materially changed since a few years ago. And I wonder if you can sort of talk about what you see in that space.
I think it's important to review the full analysis that is in the report, because it gives you the actual numbers of body-worn camera, the statistics for the body-worn cameras. We are seeing a downward decrease, but it is still very high.
Other questions for Monitor Council?
Yeah, I have a question about this whole EBD situation that we find ourselves in. It's been now a year of the back and forth when we first found out that this was getting rolled out, in what was supposed to be like January, February. We pushed back as much as we could. We spoke out against it. And Monitor, I hear you saying again that the OIM, along with the COB, is against it full stop. However, we've also, contributed edits and feedback to the proposed policy changes. I'm just wondering, at what point do we stop going along to get along and stop feeding into the whole process? Yeah, because it doesn't make sense to me how, collectively we're against something full stop, but we keep going along. And at what point do we stop the theatrics and the back and forth and the going along to get along? At what point do we just stop?
I guess a couple of things. One, the ordinance requires us to, when policy is submitted, to weigh in. And I would say that we have come a long way if EBD, and I agree that the ultimate determination about this is going to be up to Executive Director Gardner. And although it feels like this is going forward, I think that conversation still can continue. So there is benefit to continuing to state our position and our objections. But we are a long, long way from what was originally proposed to, as the time has passed, to the most recent version I saw. I am waiting for the final version. At some point, I did speak with the chief and indicated it wasn't a good time, good use of our time and resources to keep responding to every draft that was being put on the website. and that we would not be doing so. We will address the final draft. And I think that we've had a tremendous impact as from where we started to where we are now. But I'm not in control of making that decision. I can only continue to point out the problems with it, and I will continue to do so. And then if EBD is implemented, then the next phase of the process will be for us to gather data and look at how it's being implemented, find out, engage with the community as to how it's being implemented, look at the research that is promised to be done, and make recommendations or comments on that research.
Thank you for clarifying, Monitor. What I'm hearing you say is because we have to, because the ordinance says so. Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for all that you've done to get it to a point where it's at now.
Other questions for the monitor? Okay. Well, appreciate your summary of that important information. As a reminder, the monitor's office is required, as the monitor said, to publish both semi-annual and annual reports. The monitor's office and the COB publish our annual reports in the March timeframe. So it's not too late to get hot on what happened the first part of the year, but we're shortly here going to be providing, both organizations will be providing their annual report in very short order. So those are publicly available. If community members are interested in the results there, do dig into those in more depth. With that, I think we neither have time for any more discussion nor an executive session. So if folks are okay with it, I might call the meeting to an end and wish everyone happy holidays and a joyous new year. And again, Karen, thank you so much for your service, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy holidays to
Happy
everyone.
holidays.
Happy holidays. Take care.